Yep, we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So, we're supposed to have a show yesterday to debate communism versus capitalism, but somehow we could not have that show because I just came back from a work trip and I got home very late and I couldn't do it that time. So, we had to push it to probably next week, Saturday. We're going to be having that debate. Myself and Ada Akbala, we're going to be having that debate. So, I want you guys to come around. Now, today's topic, we're going to be talking about three things majorly. Three things, but the major conversation was centered around the backlash by Bud Light, conservative or right wing backlash to Bud Light, given their recent ad with Dylan Mulvaney. So, is the is the is it legitimate? Is it warranted? Does it make any sense? So, but the other two things I want to talk about, the first would be I saw a video of police officers going to a house, to a wrong house, and in New Mexico, and then ended up killing the owner of the house. The second one is going to be Mr. Mina said you we need a legitimate female to weigh in on this, and you're here. So, Mr. Mina, I hope you would come into the conversation. I hope you will join the conversation. Right? I'll open up the stream and then you can call in. Yeah. So the second conversation would be around the divorce of Hakimi. I think Hakimi is his name. Somehow is getting divorced from his wife, but she's asking for half of his property. And surprise, surprise, everything he owns is registered to his mother. So what do you guys think about that? Those are the three things we're going to be uh, talking about today. Mr. Mino said, I will not support a company that makes a mockery of my gender. So the first conversation. So police officers in New Mexico, they got to a house, they knocked for a while, a couple of minutes. They announced that they were there. They announced that they were police, but somehow they figured out it was the wrong house. So they were about to leave. They were about to leave when the owner of the house showed up. He showed up with a gun, and then they ended up killing him. They ended up shooting him to death. I always ask myself this question that the US has a very funny relationship with guns, right? The Second Amendment um, guarantees the right to bear arms, right? Guarantees people's right to defend themselves, to defend their property. So it shouldn't be a surprise that people are armed in the US, especially in their own home. But then the police always act surprised whenever they see a gun. They act like guns are not, they are like this, that people are not supposed to own guns. They always act surprised and they end up killing someone. They end up, drawing their weapons and firing and ending the life of, at times, an innocent person, right? Because if you look at this case, it was totally the police fault, right? They went to the wrong house. They knocked. The man probably was upstairs. He heard the banging in his door. He certainly did not know they were police, because if he knew they were police, there was no way he was going to come out with his guns. He definitely did not know that they were police at his door, right? He goes out because he thinks there is an intrusion. They see the gun and then they fire shots at him. They kill this innocent man in his house. I mean, he had the right to be in his house. He had the right to be armed. He had the right, in fact, he had the right to fire the first shot, if at all. The police did not have any right to be there because it was a wrong house. So I don't know how this case would go, but I think that there should be a criminal investigation into this, and those police officers should be fired, and plus the dispatcher who gave them the wrong address, they should be fired, and he should face criminal prosecution, because you just can't end the life of a man. They would say that, oh, they feared for their lives, that's why they shot the man. Well, the man feared for his life and his property. He was trying to protect his family, he was trying to protect his wife and his kids, because he thought they were intruders. So if anyone has the claim to I feared for my life, the man had more right to say I feared for my life. He had the right to be there. He had the right to be armed. The police did not have the right to be there. And for them to just shoot him when they know they were in the wrong house, that's crazy. That's nuts to me. So I don't know, but I think these incidents, with police, and once they just see a weapon, they freak out so much. They act so surprised, like as though nobody in the years was supposed to be armed. the law guarantees people to bear arms. So was that man supposed to lead out with his license to bear arms? Was he supposed to? I don't know, man. But Steve and others will correct me if I'm wrong in that situation. So the next topic, Hakimi, a Paris Saint Germain footballer. I think is a defender, and this news has made Twitter gone on fire. Right. So I think he's 24 years old, and his wife is 36 years old, and they're getting a divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Somehow he cheated, and when his wife was out, his family were out in Dubai. I think on a holiday, he brought a girl into the matrimonial home, and the girl ended up accusing him of raping her. So there's all that. But there's also news that the divorce had proceed they had wanted to divorce before this incident happened, right? So it got to the point where they had to do settlement, they had to share the properties, and they end the funny thing is that the guy had put all his property in his mother's name, right? So he had put all his property, his 80% of his salary goes straight to his mother's account. So he literally owns nothing. There's nothing for him to share with her at this point. And many people are saying, well, that's a smart move. Many men are hailing him, and the women are just pissed. For me, some people were saying, well, he didn't trust her enough. Why would he do such a thing like that? Because he didn't trust her. For me, I don't think it's a matter of trust. I just think it's insurance, right? If you know that more than 50% of marriages are going to end in divorce anyway, well, as a man with that kind of wealth, you got to find a way to protect yourself, because if it's a matter of trust, why are they getting a divorce now? It's not a matter of trust. This is happening right now, and it could very well lose half of his shit to a woman, right? So so that's on that one. Not so much on that. Then the main topic for today, before I open up the stream, the main topic: Bud Light and conservative, backlash and all that. So conservative Twitter has gone mad again. They're just boycotting Bud Light. They're making so much videos. They're buying the beer and destroying the beer. They are calling for the cancellation of Bud Light and all that stuff, right? So there, and there's been reports that Bud Light lost about $6 billion, or their stock value is going down, and all that. And they are saying this is go woke, go broke, right? So this is an example of go woke, go broke. And I look at something like that and I say, well, this is cancellation, right? This is the same thing that left does, right? If you don't agree with what someone does, you cancel them, right? Like Scott Adams said, he was cancelled, right? He was cancelled. That's the left. So the right does it also. The right just terms it something else. They just term it go woke, go broke. I certainly am not in favor of what Bud Light is doing, but I just think it's childish. I think it's an overreaction, right? Because what what exactly are they mad over? What are those men mad over? Are they mad over the fact that Dylan Mulvaney, who is a man, right, according to them, is promoting a beer brand? He's a man. You guys say he's a man. You agree that he's a man, right? So why are you mad that a man is promoting a beer brand, right? Why are you mad? So if at all he's a woman, right? Don't women drink beer as well? Don't they drink beer as well? So I'm trying to wrap. The funny thing is, I think Bud Light knew exactly what they were doing. They knew this backlash was going to happen. I mean, they do not exist in a vacuum. They know that Dylan Mulvaney is the hot thing right now, is the big thing right now. And they were counting on this backlash. Because to tell you the truth, what happens after this whole, you know, on the internet, people have very short memories. In another week or two, another story will come up that would just make this a thing of the past. And they're having so much publicity. Right wingers, conservatives are giving these guys so much publicity, much more than they could ever pay for, because they're making videos about them, they're sharing their content, they are doing so many things around this beer Bud Light that I never heard of Bud Light before. But this week it's Bud Light everywhere, Bud Light everywhere, Bud Light everywhere. And I'm sure there are a whole lot of people who probably didn't know about this beer that know about it right now, because conservative Twitter, they're just mad. So on the long run, is it going to be impactful? Is it going to make any significant change? Is it going to affect them? I don't. I see them benefiting from this on the long run because this there's more exposure, right? There is actually no publicity is bad publicity. People are still going to go back to drinking the beer when all this has blown over, right? So all the other companies, they knew they counted on this backlash. That's what I think, and they came up with that some lamest apology, which is reason wasn't really an apology. It was just it didn't make any sense. They didn't really say anything. They just said a whole bunch of nothing. So that's me talking too much. I hope Mr. Minia will call into this conversation so we can hear her thoughts. I think she's mad too that what's his name? I'm calling not her, is he? Dylan Mulvaney is making a caricature of women. I think women are the ones who are supposed to be more angry at this rather than men who. Right, if you want to, don't want to see if you don't want to drink a beer, go right ahead. Don't drink it. If you don't want to patronize somebody, go right ahead. Do not patronize them. But for you to make a big show out of it on social media, it's just still virtue signaling to your people, right? To the right wingers, were the good guys, were the culture warriors and all that. I don't think he will. It's just like the same people on Twitter who announce they're going to be unfollowing you or who announce they're going to be blocking you. Well, go right ahead. It doesn't mean anything. So I'm done talking. I've talked too much. So Steve, welcome to the show. I'm gonna put the link in the description so anyone else can call in. Uh, let's start with the first topic. With the police shooting of that man in New Mexico, where they
Yeah.
went to the wrong house. What do you think about that?
I think it's incredibly unfortunate, and I think that the police officers involved and those who told them where to go should be held accountable, legally accountable for the death of the homeowner. Because as a homeowner, you have every right to defend yourself against intruders. Period. And if the cops were in the wrong house, they are the intruder. They are breaking the law. They are entering a man's house. It's unfortunate that he got killed. It really is because it's happened before where people have done that, and the person who was residing in the house was able to escape legal culpability because the police came into their house, the wrong house. Um, I believe there's actually someone. I doubt that this hasn't happened, but I think there was a case not too long ago, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, where a homeowner did in fact shoot and kill a police officer who was coming into the wrong house. Nothing happened to him because he has a right to defend his property. He has a right to defend himself and his family and his property, and yeah, he was. The police were clearly in the wrong. Does that mean I want to see police officers die? No, that's not what I want. But I do want people to be able to protect themselves against a tyrannical government. I want them to be able to defend themselves against someone breaking into their house, whether it's the police or anybody else. So, yeah,
So, Steve, I've got to take you up on a point there, right? You said
sure.
you think people should have the right to protect themselves against a tyrannical government. I think that's a if that's no offense, but that's one of the silliest arguments I've heard about on the need for people to be armed, right? Has there ever been a situation where armed citizens went up against the US government and came out on top? Right.
Maybe not the
I
U.S.
can
government, but
understand.
certainly Ukraine and Russia.
No, 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 no. Let's bring it to the US, right?
Okay.
Because the Ukraine is something that is not the government fighting its people. Do you really think that if the army does not mutiny, right, and a certain a civil war breaks out between the federal government and the people of the United States, right? The army
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mutiny. The federal government is still in charge of the military hardware, everything is still in control. Do you really
Mm-hmm.
think that the people would be able to defeat the government, the federal government, as it is constituted?
Absolutely,
Well, I don't think so.
I do.
I don't think so. I I,
there,
I don't think so. I
the
would buy the argument of people need to have guns for self-defense, but I think
mhm.
it's a pipe dream to think that you your the guns you have is going to be able to defeat the government of the United States when the army doesn't mutiny.
Well, that was the purpose of the Second Amendment as it was written, was to defend against a tyrannical government. It wasn't to go shooting. It wasn't to go hunting. It wasn't to do anything other than to be able to defend yourself against a tyrannical government, against any threats that might invade your property or your family. So whether or not you can defeat the government is the wrong question. The question is, should you have the right to do so, even if you lose? The answer is always going to be yes.
Okay. Good answer. But so, has there ever been a situation where people have exercised that right?
Yeah, the Bundys in Idaho did. They actually held off law enforcement, government law enforcement for quite a while. And there was a huge upswell of individuals coming from different states to help the Bundys defend themselves. So I think it's more than possible. There's certain laws in the United States that do not permit military action on American citizens. I can't remember what those are specifically, but they had a significant police force. It's been years since I've even looked at this, but there was a significant police presence, law enforcement, I should say, presence at that location. I think the FBI was there. There were multiple law enforcement agencies, police agencies. It was a big deal. They were definitely the underdogs of America. We were all rooting for them, like, stick it to the man, dudes.
So what exactly were they fighting for?
That is a long, long, drawn out story that I probably would get wrong. But from my memory, the federal government was killing their animals because their animals were on so-called federal property. But the Bundys had legal rights to have their animals. I think it was sheep or cows. They had legal right, because they were grandfathered into a certain law. They had a legal right to be to allow their animals to graze that land. And so Bundys were fighting against that. Against that kind of tyrannical behavior. So I might be wrong on a couple of aspects of that, but I think what they were defending themselves against, and I remember in my mind, I believe that they were justified in defending themselves and
So what
defending
was the
their
outcome of
livestock.
that standoff?
I think one person died, and then I think one person spent a little bit of jail time. But I think that the courts were in their favor, but I don't remember. Like I said, this was years
is
ago.
that a win for them if one person still spent time in jail for, for expressing their rights, for carrying out their rights? It is part of the Second Amendment says that you should be able to defend yourself against the tyrannical government. And the government was being tyrannical at that point because they were killing their animals who were in the place they were supposed to be, right? So is that a win for them? And I also want to know about what happened to the animals afterwards. Did they get what they actually wanted, or was it in favor of the government? Did the government actually get their way? Who got their way in that interaction?
If I remember correctly, the person who went to jail didn't actually go to jail for something directly related to this. It was a side thing. I can't remember. Like I said, there's so many details here that I'm missing out here. But I'm trying to think, and I'm going to think of one later on that's going to be a perfect example that I can't think of right now. But there is this kind of contentious thing, I would say, topic of that people are not discussing, which is, at what point is police presence actually unconstitutional? Right. Well, obviously it's unconstitutional for them to break into another person's house. Right. This is not, the police force is not supposed to be the Gestapo or the KGB or the NKVD or any other kind of militant police force. That's not what it's supposed to be there for. And giving all historical aspects aside, police are there to, even that can be argued. Police are there to protect property, actually, and they're there to protect laws. and to enforce laws, but they don't actually protect anything. But that's a whole other debate that we would have to get into. But needless to say, I'm personally for anybody defending their home and their family against intruders, whether that be U.S. government, whether that be law enforcement, whether that be some random dude on the street. Like, you have a right to defend yourself, plain and simple. Whether you win or lose is not the relevant question. It's should you have the right to do so? And yes, the right to do so is pertinent and relevant. Nope, you're on mute.
So sorry, I was typing something.
Oh,
Well,
you good?
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know, but I still find it. I still find it difficult to think that. I find it difficult to think that the police, in any shakedown between the police and the people, that the people will come out on top. Especially if it's a sort of a military confrontation, if it's a confrontation with arms and all that. I don't know. Maybe it's never happened. So, or it happened, and we saw sort of the outcome, but it's never happened in the large scale. So, the second topic. What do you think about the Hakimi? I don't know if you are familiar with that case, the Sharif Hakimi case, where he had all his property in his mother's name, and now the wife can't have half of his property. Do you think that was a smart move? Do you think that was a dumb thing to do? Do you think that was a? What do you think? You're muted.
Sorry. Aside from the fact that that makes me laugh hysterically when I think about it, but I don't know the facts of the situation really. But um, I think there's a couple of things that can be discussed here. One is, um, was it right for him to hide his intentions and his money that his wife was probably there for to help him support or help him be supported? Was it right for him to hide the nature of his money? No, it wasn't right. Was it smart? Yeah, very smart. But in I believe in anywhere in the United States, that's she could still get her money, because they can prove that his income is enough, right? So they would definitely charge him for alimony and child support if they have any children. Um, Wherever the money goes after he receives it is irrelevant. The fact that he's receiving it, he still has to pay for it.
Mm.
Now, the broader difficulty comes when it's like, okay, well, we've got 8 cars. Well, not really, because my mom owns all 8 of them. Okay, where did she get the money for this? So if they can prove that she didn't have the money to get those cars, and that the only way that she could have possibly purchased them was because of his money, then I think that's an easily provable situation where you can say it's obviously his money and he needs to pay up, right?
But you run into problems because the law the law might not look at those other extenuating circumstances. They might look at what is the paper saying, because I can decide to buy something for you, Steve, and I've bought it. It's on your name, even though it
Mhm.
was my money. It's on your name. It shouldn't count as my property anymore. So if I have a dispute with someone and the person wants to claim my property, how can they how can they come to you and say, oh, this thing that Charles bought for you, it doesn't matter that it's on your name now, but he bought it with his money, so you have to. Where do you draw the line? Do you say it stops at $500,000 or $1 million or $24 million? Is there? I think there would be a kind of a tough that would be a tough situation to be. It probably
Yeah.
might be a novel case, right?
Well,
Yeah.
they can also, if they can prove that he was trying to obfuscate his responsibilities nefariously by basically laundering money through his mother, they can absolutely tap that. And there's been cases, if I'm remembering correctly, there have been cases that have actually addressed this exact same problem. However, it definitely makes it more difficult to attack, and his ex-wife is really going to have to like throw a lot of money at this problem to get a solution. And this is why I think it's wrong. It's like if your wife was there to help you through a time period where you didn't have anything, right? Or even let's just say he was already wealthy and then they got married. Whatever she helped him earn in that time period that they were together, she's owed. She's owed a certain portion of that income, especially if she was
but not
taking care of
half.
kids, all this other stuff.
But not half.
Why not? Are there not two
Why?
bodies in the marriage? You know, just because she doesn't work doesn't mean that she doesn't do work for the family, you know. But there's a whole lot of other different topics there. Like if they were only married for a couple of years, you know, I think he could probably easily argue that she's a gold digger. That's an
Yeah,
argument.
they
Sure.
they were not married for that long. I think they married in 2020. 2020, yeah. So
Well, then she should only be maybe alimony and a little bit of
and she's
alimony at
not poor
that.
by any means. She is not poor as well. So
Well, how rich or how poor she is has nothing to do with it.
okay.
It's what role did she play in the marriage? That's what is the concern.
Mm,
Because I could be wealthy as hell, but you owe me $5. That doesn't mean you stop owing me $5.
mm, mm, mm. True. Hey Stanley, welcome to the conversation.
I'll be right back.
All right.
Hey, Charles, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing?
Pretty good. It's kind of a slow Sunday.
Yeah. So tell me what you think about the first topic, the second, and before we move to the main topic of today.
Well, you were talking about the Second Amendment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree that, and I think for the most part, when police, when that situation happens where police go to the wrong or serve a warrant on the wrong place, most times they're held accountable. Though I can think of Breonna Taylor as an exception, but um, a lot of times police will try, as lawyers, as their lawyers, will or want to do, they will do everything to, try and get the police off or limit liability, that sort of thing. But, sometimes there's just no way, the police are just wrong. Mistakes do happen, but that's why police need to be a lot more careful. You know, somebody needs to be double checking, triple checking. So I
I
know in a
agree.
lot of cases they're also going to, some places are going to get rid of no knock warrants. Basically police can't just bust down the door and go in. But I don't know the details of that. But the bottom line is police should be held accountable when they make mistakes, just like everyone else.
Yeah. So in this instance, I don't think it was a no knock. They actually knocked. They knocked for a couple of minutes, but I'm sure the guy upstairs they knocked and they announced that they were the ones. And when they discovered it was the wrong house, they were actually leaving. They were leaving when the man came out, and when they saw the gun, they just opened fire on him. So uh,
Really? So
tragic
they knew
situation.
they
Okay.
were in the wrong. They knew they were in the
Yeah.
wrong spot.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Ooh, well,
Yeah,
that
that
changes
brings out a
everything.
whole different conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
For one thing, never go to your door armed. Like if someone's knocking on the door, never go to your door armed. You can have your firearm semi close to you, but you never walk to the door armed. That's just stupid. Let's say that you've got police officers knocking on your door because they're trying to find a child, right? And all of a sudden there's a gun in their face. They have legal authority to return fire.
No. Now,
Absolutely.
so the man didn't know they were police,
You're
right?
talking about
He
threat,
thought they were intruders.
right?
So if someone is, if are you going to go out to meet an intruder with
Ugh.
your gun by
Well,
your
if
wall? No, you're going to go out
well,
armed.
I'd have to know more detail, but I mean, if they
Yeah.
had their backs turned and they're heading out the house,
If they were
you
never in
know,
the house,
No, they didn't have their back turned. They were backing away because it was their camera that captured the whole incident. So they were backing away when the man came out, and they saw the gun and they just opened fire. Yeah.
yeah, that's too close for me to call.
I would say you have to talk about perceived threat, right? So if the guy answers the door, whether it was the wrong house or not, if I'm answering the door with a firearm, right, there's a level of threat there. If they're just knocking on my door and they're turning around to leave, which is not the case here, obviously, as you stated, um, homeowner's in the wrong. Like, you don't shoot someone or you don't bring a gun to a door where the threat is leaving. Like, the threat has been assessed as no longer a threat if they're leaving.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, I mean, I told you the story about
So
me up in
let me
the
search for the
mountains
video.
and,
So
you know,
if I
me
can
not pulling the trigger because the guy was driving away. Right? There's a fundamental legal precedent here. If they're running away, they're no longer a threat, right?
Right, or if the
There's
cops are de-escalating. I mean, I'd like to know
right.
how they de-escalated.
Yeah, I don't like the idea that anytime a gun is in the discussion, automatically it's drop it, drop it, drop it. It's like, I have a right to bear this, right? I have a right to own this firearm. I have a right to carry it in my own house how I see fit. If I want to walk around my house with my gun in my hand all day, I have a right to do so.
Did they identify themselves?
I'm sure they
yeah, they
did.
did.
And I'm
Yeah,
sure
they
the guy,
identified themselves as police and he's still shooting. Well,
He didn't shoot. They identified themselves as police, but I'm guessing he did not hear them. He heard the
maybe he was
banging.
deaf. I don't
Uh,
know.
he heard
That's
the
that.
banging and all that. So let me see. Let me play the
So
let me
let me
play the
be
video.
clear about this really easy problem. If they entered the wrong house, he has every right to fire on them. Period. If they didn't enter the house, the homeowner's in the wrong. It just depends. You know, if he didn't open fire, then there's still a significant discussion that has to be involved there.
Can you see the screen?
well, you
Yeah,
remember
I can see
that
it.
you remember
5th,
that
three
one.
officers showed up at Robert Dotson's doorstep. They thought they were responding to a domestic violence call, but they went to the wrong house. Police say that 52-year-old Mr. Dotson opened the door with a firearm, which resulted in a shootout and his untimely death. Now, Farmington police have redacted identities from the body cam footage they released tonight. We're playing it for you right now. One's at normal speed, one slowed down, but a warning, the footage you're about to see might be difficult to watch.
So tell me wrong.
Hey. Shots fired! Shots fired!
Now, all of the officers involved have been put under paid administrative leave as they undergo an investigation. In response to the shooting, Farmington's police chief said, quote, Mr. Dotson was not the subject of the call that our officers were responding to, and this ending is just unbelievably tragic. I am extremely sorry that we are in this position.
That's strange. I mean, why would
We
he
begin
answer
with the
the
suspected
door?
leaker of military documents now behind bars.
21-year-old Jack.
So what were you saying, Stanley? Because I have something to add on this.
I'm not absolutely sure why he would answer the door like that.
I'm not either. Well, it looked like he was actually pointing the firearm at the officers when he opened the door.
Yeah.
Which, if he did, I hate to say this because he's a human being, but he's a moron. Like, you don't do that. Why would you point I mean, I can see it from both sides. It's like the guy might think that this is a bunch of teenagers. Maybe he is deaf. He's old, right? Maybe he's deaf and he didn't
Well, no, he was
hear
52.
everything.
That's not old.
says the guy in his 50s.
Yeah.
No, like, I can see how this is going both ways, and I can see how the discussion is going to be going. But the thing is like, are they trying to break into your house? No, they were obviously not trying to break into their house.
Yeah,
The cops were walking away.
There were floodlights and everything.
Right.
What was he thinking?
There's no way he didn't see that they were police officers. Not to mention, even if he didn't, the threats are leaving. They're not trying to enter his house.
Excuse me.
Like, any fool would be able to say there was no significant threat there. There was no significant threat posed once the cops started leaving the house.
They weren't even on the porch.
No, they weren't. They were leaving.
Well, he wasn't chasing after them. He was still technically inside his house. They just saw the gun and they shot him.
If you're inside your house, you can't be firing out of it. They have to be in your house. You can't be shooting outside the house like that.
But are you sure he shot the gun?
Well, in certain circumstances you can, but in this circumstance, I don't see how my argument would be applicable.
There was no threat.
Yeah, there was no threat. Like, if they were trying to break into a window, sure, you have every right to shoot them before they enter the house, especially if there's a clear indication that they're trying to break into the house. But they weren't. I don't see how the homeowner was not at fault here.
I don't see how he was at fault here. I don't see how he was at fault, because the whole thing started with them going to the wrong house.
Sure.
So you have to start from there.
Okay.
So this whole situation would never have happened if they'd gone to the right house. So them going to the wrong house, just, the man had a right to have his gun in his house, and he had the right to think that the house was being broken into, and he had the right to respond to it. So I
mean, I understand what you're saying, and technically you're right. But just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Well,
and the way he answered that door with the gun trained.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the military does it and the way cops do it, if a gun is pointed at you, you assume they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, their firearms training, you don't train your gun on someone or something unless you're
willing to kill it. Yeah.
There are ways to carry a gun with, that's obvious. I mean, you don't carry a gun like that. You carry it, pointed at the ground, or
and then give the intruder the chance to get one at you before you could take out a shot, right?
Well, yeah, but Charles,
that's not the situation, though. Clearly,
I mean, they weren't even on the porch. Well, I mean, he has a right to carry a gun, but the police have a right to defend themselves too, especially if they're not actually threatening.
My firearm would be behind my back. If I was to answer the door, my firearm would be behind my back. It wouldn't even be visible. You wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where there's floodlights on the house. You can clearly see that. He comes out. He can see who they are. Unless he's blind as a bat. And if that's the case, he shouldn't be firing a gun anyways.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, if you look at it, you have to understand perceived threat. So once the police were leaving, there was no perceived threat. Even if it wasn't the police, let's say it was just some neighborhood kids doorbell ditching. Once they leave, they're no longer a threat. They're no longer a perceived threat. So him bringing a gun into the situation heightened the threat level, and then pointing at him heightened it again. So there's multiple escalations of violence here that are going on.
We have to also define leaving, because their backs were not to his door, right? Their touch was still at his door, right? So even if they were backing away, their touch was still at his door. So, and there was no way for him to know that these guys were police or these guys were leaving.
Well, this is what I would do, and I've done this, is wait and see. Like, if there's nobody at your door and you're seeing flashlights walking away, they are no longer a threat. Look through the window, watch. There was clearly a large window in front of his house. He could have watched them through that and held a gun at the door, like as an entry level, as an entry point, and held his ground there. Like, once they entered his house, he would have been perfectly fine. legally
Yeah.
to open fire on someone ingressing upon his house illegally.
Well,
But what
not
he
only
did was
that,
he chased them. He chased them. That's the problem.
well, not only that, did he call 911?
Yeah, he did.
Right.
He did. I think
He
there were
did.
reports that his wife, even the wife, fired shots too. When she heard the shots, she fired shots out and she called 911 that people were trying to break into their house.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
You shouldn't be shooting shots just like
Yeah,
that.
that's
That sounds
that's
like a
bad
wild.
firearm control.
Yeah, that's a little out of control.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
bad firearm
exactly.
control.
For
Like,
me,
because I have to be aware of anything outside or past the target that I'm shooting at, right? So if someone enters my home and I shoot a guy and that round goes through him into the next house and kills a child in the next house, I am legally responsible for that round once it leaves the barrel of my gun. So what they're doing is incredibly dangerous and incredibly what's the word I'm looking for? Shit, I just had the word.
Wild
Irresponsible.
West.
Well, just incredibly irresponsible. My personal opinion is I'm siding with the police on this one.
So for me, I
Yeah,
think
I
that
think you
I
kind of
think
have
you
to.
shouldn't have because you don't even know what's out there. If you're opening your door with the gun out, and those guys they're evil people and they mean you, they're going to get one at you before you
Yeah,
get
but
any sort of harm. You
but
don't know how
Charles,
much of no, I'm trying to agree with you. I'm trying to say that what he did somehow was a dumb thing in the sense that um you maybe there are five guys out there with guns, right, waiting for you, and you're one guy and you open your door with a gun.
Well,
That's
strategically, it was moronic.
yeah, yeah. So you could have checked out the window to see, oh, who's there, or probably he just wanted to think, or maybe he just thought he wanted to scare the people off, like, okay, maybe these are just burglars without guns, and let me just show my gun and scare them
Stupid.
off. So well,
Stupid.
what
the police
city?
made
What?
stupid mistakes and he himself made Freddie,
He
you
made a
said what
deadly
happened to
mistake.
the Bud Light story. We're going to get to the Bud Light story.
Well, wait, what city did this occur in?
New Mexico.
Farmington, New
Yeah,
Mexico. I'm familiar with the
yeah.
town.
Well, it's the West. It's the Wild West out there.
Well, I'm trying to remember.
So before people start saying, "Oh, the title of this stream is different and we're talking about something else," let's go back to Bud Light. So, Stanley, what do you think about the conservative backlash on Bud Light?
I think it's a tempest in a teapot. You know, the two things aren't going to happen. America's not going to stop drinking beer. And if you're buying beer to shoot holes in the cans, you're buying beer. So,
Yeah, and I saw a video of they were using tractors to just ram over like thousands of Bud Light beer bottles. I'm like, is this free? Did they get it free, or they're just wasting their money, right? Do people are people that emotionally invested in ruining something they don't like, that they're going to put their money into it and just lose money just so that they can you know give the finger to whoever they don't like.
well, it's performance art.
I'm not a big fan of the whole. So the thing that bothers me is that, well, there's a whole bunch that bothers me. For one thing, it's like, so Kid Rock had a bunch, like, apparently he bought a bunch of Bud Light cases and then shot at them with an AK-47. And it's like, you can't tell me that that's not a threat of violence. You seriously can't, because you know why he's shooting them. It's because a trans person was the spokesperson for that brand. It's a clear dog whistle to me for violence. And that's what I'm
Is it?
concerned about. I think
Is it?
so.
Because he was shooting at bear cans, he wasn't shooting at people. He was mad at the
No.
company.
Well, this is why dog whistles are notoriously difficult to hear, right? Unless you are aligned with that individual. for me, it was a dog whistle to say that I am not willing to allow this to happen without violence. So in some aspects, it was a call to violence on trans individuals, and I don't agree with that. Like, why did he have to shoot them? Why didn't he just show himself throwing the Bud Light away? Be like, I'm not gonna drink this trash, and then throws it away.
Pouring it down a sink.
Right.
Well, you could also interpret if he's throwing it away, you could interpret that as throwing the trans person away. So you could interpret whatever you want to interpret into any situation. I don't think
Sure, but I think
it's
that's
kind of a stretch to say
that is a
it's
stretch.
signifying violence against trans people. I don't know.
Well,
Wolf is saying, Charles, though it was a thought of causing harm to Dylan, could be subliminal.
mhm.
Well,
That's a dog whistle.
I try not to guess what's in people's minds. Shark Tank said, I don't care, I'm going to buy all the Bud Light. Don't let Matt Walsh come for you.
Oh man, good old Matty Walsh.
Matt Walsh.
I cannot stand that man.
Well,
No,
I
but
can-
like, I guess the reason why most conservatives are upset with it is because so this is the thing. Anytime someone says they're trans, conservatives have been taught so well by the likes of Matt Walsh and his buddies that just because someone is trans must mean that they support X, Y, and Z, right? So there's a lot of people that are saying, well, Dylan Mulvaney supports transitioning children. I don't know that. I've tried to search for it. I can't see any evidence of it. And I've been watching from a little while just to, see what she's all about. And I don't see her doing things that they're accusing her of doing. So if you ask me, it's just another aspect of woke against woke. And because woke right, woke left, this is just ridiculous bullshit, if you ask me. Like, it's getting so ridiculous.
My question is, what if she was? So what?
Yeah, how's it relevant?
Well, I mean, assuming parents have guardians of some sort, I mean,
Right.
I think what it is, people are just afraid of, someone being a spokesman for a major beer brand. You remember like the Budweiser frogs, these ad campaigns sometimes go viral, and I guess they can be influential, but
Yeah.
I don't see, I honestly don't understand why this whole thing against Bud Light. I don't understand what the right is actually going to get out of it.
I don't either. Here's another aspect of this. Why did Bud Light feel the necessity to make a statement? Just sell the damn beer. Like, just because you have an opinion on something doesn't mean you always need to voice that opinion. And you don't have to have an opinion on everything. Sometimes you can just shut up and sell your bloody beer. I mean, it's piss water anyways, and I don't drink it. But still, you sell beer. That's your job. Your job isn't to vocalize a political position because it's not necessary to.
Well, see, I kind of disagree with that. A business can do whatever it wants to do. That used to be the position of, the conservative position. If you don't want to sell a cake to a gay couple, that's fine. If you want to have, whoever your spokesman might be for your product, that's your business. On one hand, what I don't understand is the right is supposedly pro-business and entrepreneurial, but when a business takes a position that they don't like, all of a sudden cancel culture becomes their buddy.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. I totally agree with you. No disagreement.
It's so hypocritical.
Well, and that's what this whole conversation really got started with me and Charles was because we talked about it, I think it was like yesterday. It's like the conservatives' reaction to this is just ridiculous. Because they claim to be for X, Y, and Z, but then when someone who does X, Y, and Z, but just doesn't align themselves with conservatives, all of a sudden it's a problem. And the left is guilty of this too. They're all like, yeah, you should be able to present how you want to present, but then tells us that we can't use certain terminology like mother and father. We have to use birth giver. Like, kiss my ass. Like, it's so hypocritical of people to do that. That's why I'm not going to go down another road, but I agree with you. It's 100% ridiculous.
I think people can say birth giver or whatever they want to say. Part of it is you have to know your audience. And the second thing is the problem comes in when you start criticizing what other people are saying. If I say mother and you correct me, oh, you mean birth giver, well, I have a problem with that.
Right. You don't get to dictate my speech.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if someone else, if I say mother and, someone else says birth giver, I think it'll be strange, but I wouldn't want to restrict their right to use the term.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to restrict their right to use it either, but you just don't get to tell me
Now,
that I
I'll
have to use it. Right.
Ridiculing is okay.
Yeah, but I think that's where I think I agree with the right, because it's not just about them saying it; it's them wanting you to say it, right? I saw a video. I saw a video a while back. A man was, he was just giving a story that he went to a, I think it was a restaurant, and he was having a conversation, and he said something like, "Oh, my wife did that," and the waiter said, "No, not your wife, your partner."
Oh,
I was
no.
like, I
Nope.
said my wife, and you're saying, you're correcting me to say no. You're supposed to say partner, right? If you want to call your wife your partner, that's fine. But if someone is saying this is how I address my wife, right? You have no right to tell them that the appropriate word now is partner. And you see that kind of language policing, where
Yeah.
people say, oh no, it's not women, it's because not all women give birth. There are some women that don't give birth, so women is not an inclusive term anymore. You have to be very specific and say chest feeders or breastfeeders or people with uteruses. I mean, it's
Where have
crazy.
you, where have you seen that?
Oh, a
I've
lot
seen it.
online.
Yeah, I've seen it. Can I just say that the comment section here is hilarious? You guys are a riot. It looks like they're having a good time in the comments. Some really good jokes. Like, can we get an admin in here to boot the person who thinks Michelob Ultra tastes good? I almost died laughing about
That
that.
should be Misty. You want to boot Misty out? No,
Oh,
no.
man.
I actually used to drink Michelob Ultra years ago when it first came out. I mean, Bud Light doesn't really taste that good either. It's just mainly cheap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why beer in GTA is called piss water or pisswasser. It's basically in German it means piss beer, piss water. But no, someone actually, I want to address this in the comments. They said, how is this a dog whistle to violence towards trans people? So if I was to juxtapose that against another action, let's say that I took, as an atheist, a Bible and said that I don't approve of this book, and then I shot the shit out of the Bible, would you not take that as a threat of violence? I would. I think that's the whole point, that it's a dog whistle, right? I don't need to show violence to say this book sucks, right? I can just throw it away. But when you actually go out of your way to be excessively violent towards something, then I think it's perfectly and easily arguable that it's an act of violence. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that with Christians. I'm not okay with that with trans people. Like, I'm not okay with that kind of a behavior at all, period. Like, if you want to buy Coors for pistol targets and go up in the mountains and shoot them, great, that's perfectly fine. But once you start recording that and saying, this is what I think about Dylan Mulvaney, I have a problem
Well,
with
I
that.
don't think they said this is what they think about Dylan Mulvaney. They were taking out their actions out on the beer itself, on the company, right? They
Oh,
disapprove
but
of what the company is doing.
sure, read
So
the comments of the video though. It's very, very clear. It's very, very clear.
Not
well,
only that, but I mean, the ubiquity of guns in the country.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's a lot of random. So
You're breaking up,
sensitive
Stanley.
to. Am I still?
Uh, a little bit. You're kind of like freezing up here and there.
yeah, you're freezing up. Uh, hey, Melinda, welcome. Misdemeanor says, "I didn't know this
I
was a
think it's
liberal
my
page.
internet.
No, this is a robust page. We have liberals, we have conservatives, we have
Yeah.
every bunch here. So
And Misty, liberal, the root of the word liberal is liberty. So it's not really an accurate name. I would say left, right, center. We're all here. I'm more of a libertarian. I think Stanley, you would be considered more Democrat, left leaning,
Center left.
center left, and then Charles is kind of center right, but not extreme right.
yeah, center right.
Which
The right is always right. That's why they call the right.
Yeah, well, and Misty, the whole reason why we have these discussions is to prove that people with different ideological backgrounds can actually still have conversations, and not have them divulge
Fred
into
said-
name calling
sorry.
and bullshit.
Sorry, Fred said, Mr. Stanley is an anarchist.
No.
I'm more of an anarchist than he is.
Yeah, I mean, anarchists can be right, left, or they're just anti everything.
Yeah.
Maybe you meant anti-Christ.
Sorry, Steve. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. I'd like to think. Well, I hope that that Misty didn't leave, because I value what her input could possibly be in a lot of these different conversations. So I think it's really great. Oh, good. I don't think that she did leave, but Misty, I don't think it's ridiculous. I think these are important things to discuss, and the whole thing is like, you get to make that decision. That's perfectly okay for you to have that decision, and hold that position, right? So it's also okay for me to have that position, but the difference is that I'm being challenged on those positions. So I can't just excuse something and say, well, no, it's not violence just because I say it's not violence. I have to be able to back that up. And maybe I'm not doing a great job of that today, but that's the whole point of this entire show, really, that Charles has been doing for so long.
But I mean,
is really question everything.
When they're bringing up a specific product and a specific spokesperson, I think you could probably, they're being very specific. I think you're safe to say it's a dog whistle. Specific brand of beer for a specific reason that they have a trans spokesperson. That's a dog whistle.
And shit's hit the fan when me and Stanley are agreeing.
I mean, how about just take a noose and hang a can with it? That's
right.
But when you say specific, this is not like all the beer companies are doing this thing, right? It's one beer company who did this thing that many of their drinkers did not like, and they were responding to it. So is it really specific? Is there something special about the attention they're giving to Bud Light? Bud Light brought the attention on themselves by
well, the one
doing
thing you
what
have
they
to
did.
understand is Bud Light is owned by Anheuser-Busch, and
Yep.
there's a parent company. So I mean, they're picking on a specific trademark of beer, but Anheuser-Busch has all kinds of different beers and other stuff.
Bottled water. They have
because
bottled water companies.
but
So
Dylan Mulvaney was not
really
representing.
doesn't do much.
He wasn't representing the parent company. He was he was representing the Bud Light beer itself. So I can
But see,
understand why the vitriol is
that's
on the
my
beer itself.
problem. You could, but um, you can boycott Bud Light by buying Bud. You're not really hurting the company.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So probably that's where I think that this isn't going to do really. It's not really going to do much on the long run. And I strongly think that Bud Light knew this reaction was going to come up. They knew because this
Probably.
is not the first company
They
that Dylan
they had
Mulvaney
to have made
has.
they had to have
Yeah,
made a fucking or excuse my language. They had to have made some kind of a loss calculation about how many people are we going to lose if we do this, and they were
mhm,
okay with that. Okay, that's their choice. I have a choice to drink it or not to drink it. Right. This is kind of what the free market does. Is we get to decide what product we want to use and which one we don't. Like that's the whole point of the capitalist system, is to be able to make those decisions and not force you to drink something that you don't want to drink. Like that's the whole reason why capitalism works and functions.
Well, I mean, living where I used to live, um, up on the mountain. Okay, so the rednecks aren't going to drink Bud Light; they're just going to drink Bud. So I if you're going to do performance art, it ought to be at least effective. And what they did, this whole performance thing, I just apparently these people are bored.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Stanley.
Well,
They might be bored.
um,
They also have a right to express their beliefs too. That's the other thing, is that might make us feel uncomfortable, but
oh, it didn't make me feel uncomfortable. I thought it was pretty
yeah.
fun.
But right. Well, I mean, the thing that really kind of concerns me is that people don't look at these things critically. Like you can look at this critically and still come to the same conclusion of your initial feelings on it. But you still have to think about it. You still have to like debate within yourself, is like, am I right? Or am I just knee-jerk reaction to something that doesn't necessarily require the knee-jerk reaction? Maybe I need to think about it a little bit more.
I mean, just imagine Matt Walsh criticizing a beer. Like, who takes that seriously?
I don't take Matt Walsh seriously at all, personally. The dude is so clickbaity. It's ridiculous. And he's got such a smug arrogance that I just,
Exactly.
God, I want to slap him in the face. And
What is the
he
beer?
misrepresents almost literally everything that he does. But
so
that's my
for
personal opinion.
me, I think for the cultural stuff, I'm with Matt. I think there's some things that are just ridiculous, like with the men can be women and women can be men stuff. Obviously, I'll be with him on that. But however, I still believe people can do whatever the hell they want. That's their business. If you want to be a man, if you want to address yourself as a man, that's your business. But when you begin to want to take over societal conversation, right? Then that's why I have a problem with it. Like we said earlier, that's when you want to hijack society itself and you want people to bend to your delusions. Now,
But think about this, though. Um, it wasn't Dylan, what's his name, trying to
Mulvaney.
take over anything. It was the Matt Walshes of the world who made a big deal out of it. I mean, honestly, I drank Bud Light and I had no clue. I don't watch any of their commercials. I would have never known about this had it not, the right made a stink over it.
Right. I mean, it's perfectly okay that Stanley wants to drink a shitty beer.
Right. It's all I can afford.
He has a right to do that. And here's the other thing: like, who cares if Dylan Mulvaney is a spokesperson for Bud Light? Like, why is this a thing that people are so concerned with? Like, so what? They're a spokesperson for beer. Who cares?
Well, I think the problem is they're afraid this becomes more mainstream. They simply don't want this sort of thing to be acceptable. They want people to be ashamed of who they are. They want to, basically make sure that, these people are pariahs. Essentially, it's better to stay in the closet than it is to, be a Bud Light spokesman. And I don't agree with that.
So Melinda is saying it's about beer. It's about having this person represent women. They're in all types of ads representing women. It doesn't offend me, but it's just annoying as a woman.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
sure it is.
women drink shitty beer too. We're all inclusive here.
It's also annoying. It's annoying to women when men mansplain stuff. A lot of things are annoying to everyone.
Yeah. Well, and trans people they're gonna be around. They're here to stay. They're not going away. And we do at some point need to get used to the fact that they're going to be existing in our society. You can have any kind of debate that you want to have around transitioning children and these kind of things. These are important conversations to have, but to deny someone's existence is a whole different topic of conversation that is it's a dangerous conversation when you start saying these people shouldn't exist anymore. Like, we have very clear history in the 20th century of what happens when those discussions start being taken seriously.
Well, it's I I think things would be okay. I think sometimes when you just have a big dust up like this, it really just makes things worse.
Yep, yep. So, Melinda says because when I go to the doctor, I don't want to be asked my pronouns when I'm clearly a woman. Yeah, I saw an article today where the doctor was like, he was saying his fight for inclusivity for marginalized people. The reason why he's using pronouns in his practice is because he's fighting for marginalized groups. Trans people are marginalized. I'm like, and then I was like, why would anybody or any group want to take on the label of marginalized? Like, why? Why is it such an appealing label that anybody would want to take that? How are trans people marginalized? That this doctor is saying part of his practice is to use pronouns, be more inclusive, and somehow that is going to make them not no longer marginalized. It's crazy.
Well, I
Right.
mean, well, I mean, what was the big stink over Bud Light? That's marginalization. Essentially, they're saying people should not be trans. Companies should not have trans people as spokespeople. That's marginalization.
But isn't that impersonation?
Is it what?
Isn't that impersonation
Impersonation of.
of womanhood, appropriation of womanhood?
I wouldn't.
if if
I wouldn't call it
now
impersonation.
Dylan Mulvaney has gotten deals for tampons, right? He's promoting tampons, something that he will never get to use. He's gotten deals for lipstick, something that he'll never
Well,
get to use.
let's be careful. He could use them. He just has no reason to use them. There's a difference.
Yeah.
He can use them.
Yeah.
Where is he going to use them?
I don't want to know, but I mean,
I think it's reasonable to suggest that someone who has had a transition is probably not going to have monthly periods, right? And that is something that you may want to argue should stay within the relative sex and gender of someone who is actually going to be using them, like as they were intended to be used. I can see that argument. That's an okay argument to have. But beer,
yeah, but I mean, if a company wants to have a trans woman as a spokesperson for feminine products, I think that's okay. Sure, they're a business; they can hire whoever they want to hire.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not
I could do it. I
gonna
could do a
let them
tampon
act.
commercial. I could do a tampon commercial easily. Here, use this. Stick it up your hoo-ha. Good to go. I mean, it serves such a simple purpose. Everybody understands what it
but
is. Like,
the
why
I,
is it so important that we have someone very
I made
specific try to
hey,
sell that
I
made a
could
product?
post
any man who's married to a woman who has ever been asked to go to the grocery store and get these sorts of things
Right?
is probably an eligible spokesman.
Probably. I've done it for my wife.
I have too, and it's like, hey,
So
I
Wolf
would
said
be
has
the
seen a trans dude on my TikTok man saying a man can have period if he eats spicy
Oh man.
food. You know, the thing is, I, how is anyone even taking Dylan seriously? How are companies taking him seriously? Because he's clearly doing a bit.
Maybe he's just energetic. I think Charles froze. But I don't have a problem with trans people being spokespeople for things that aren't specifically for a gender or none. I don't have a problem with that. Like, who cares? You trans individual could sell hot dogs for all I care. I don't really care. Like, I would think it was hilarious.
I'd
but
like to see
still,
that commercial.
right? I would still find it hilarious, but it's like, who cares? Like, why does the spokesperson have to be something specific? But at the same time, I also want to respect conservatives too, because they do have an opinion and they do have a part in this conversation too, which is you don't always need to be asked your pronouns, right? But they see that as this thing that is so critical, and it's really not. It's just like, you can be inclusive and not be advocating for anything. Like, if I'm a doctor and I run a facility or a clinic, and I have a policy of asking people their pronouns, that doesn't mean anything. It just means I'm asking what your pronouns are. There doesn't have to be a dog whistle associated with that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I would never ask. You know, if I get the pronoun wrong, then they'll correct me.
Which is the case, yeah. There are people who take extreme perspectives about that, but
Well, then God bless their little hearts, but
yeah,
I'm not going to be the one to get wrapped around the axle. Either correct me or not. You know,
right.
I'm not gonna make a big stink about laws and the pronoun police and all this stuff. Correct me if
Yeah.
I'm correct, and we can march on. Now, if you want to make a big deal out of it, that's where I start having a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't. Yeah. Some of this whole conversation is just really weird to me, because it's like, I think the best way I can put it is like, if I want to buy ammunition, do I really care whose face is on the box? I care if it goes pew pew, right? That's what I care about. Do I care about whose face is on the box of my beer? No, not really. I really don't care. I'm just going to drink it.
I'm just going to crush the can and throw it away.
Now, right, but I will tell you this: if a beer company came out with a picture of Hitler on the case, I'm probably not going to buy that beer.
True.
So, I mean, there's obvious things that we can say are true and false here, but really, it's like, I don't know, man. From my perspective, and I'm a little bit off my rocker today because I've got a little bit of a hangover, I'll admit. Hit the bottle a little bit too hard last night. I polished off a whole fifth, so I'm a little groggy today. But it just seems ridiculous, and I get inclusivity, and sometimes even inclusivity can go massively awry and way overrepresentative, and can actually be very detrimental to people who do identify as female, who are assigned female at birth. So there's ways that I just wish there wasn't so much vitriolic reaction to this whole conversation, and let's just like sit down and talk about it. rather than just like pitchfork and torch it, before we've even had a conversation about it, which it seems to me both conservatives and conservatives and lefties do way too often. Like you don't destroy a construct just because it's a construct. You actually have to tell me why you think that the construct should be destroyed. There has to be a good, viable reason, a logical reason why you want to destroy that construct. So that's just me.
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes people, on one hand, they give people too much credit, the general public, and on the other hand, they don't give the public enough credit. I don't understand why we need Matt Walsh to, guide us through this whole what is a woman thing. I would think that, and maybe I'm just being naive, but I would think we don't need Matt Walsh to tell us. If you really want to know, there are plenty of books out there. There are plenty of better, sources than, a dude who's a political, commentator.
Right. Well, if you need someone like Matt Walsh to tell you what to do in a situation that you can't figure out for yourself, you probably need him. So I know that's a rude thing to say, but like seriously, if you can't differentiate what's right and wrong, or if you can't have an honest to God conversation with another person about something that you just maybe don't know, because here's the thing, it's possible to not know where you stand on a topic.
Right.
That's perfectly reasonable to do. Right. But people get so used to the binary between I have to be right or I'm wrong is a ridiculous binary to get associated with. And we all fall victim to that, even myself included. I have my strong beliefs, but I don't white knuckle my beliefs so hard that I never see any other perspective, which is really, really, I don't see how that's a difficult concept to understand. But the Matt Walshes of the world, they do not. I don't see Matt Walsh, and I'm probably going to get shit for this, but I don't see Matt Walsh as being representative of what true compassionate Christians are. I just don't. I don't find him compassionate. I don't find him Christian. I don't find him reasonable. I don't find him logical. I find him grossly irrepresentative of the facts that he chooses selectively to adhere to. Does he have some interesting points? Yeah, sure. But I'm not entirely confident that those are his opinions. Are they his writer's opinions?
Well,
don't know.
I think that he comes to it from a very conservative Catholic sort of framework. He's essentially a fundamentalist.
Exactly.
And all religions, at least, the Western Judeo-Christian, religions and sects and stuff like that, or let's just say Abrahamic, they all have fundamentalists. So what I don't understand, and I guess, you tuned into Matt Walsh if you want Matt Walsh. I don't, but the problem is that he keeps popping up. He keeps doing these incendiary things.
Right.
And, I guess he wants the clicks.
I mean, it pays his bills, but that's kind of the problem, isn't it? It's like, if you're so invested in something continuing, then you're not really actually trying to fix it, are you? You just want the paycheck.
I think some of these guys, especially the Daily Wire guys, I actually think they're true believers.
I'm sure they are. That's, I really enjoy trigonometry. I love those guys.
Why?
Konstantin Kisin and Francis Foster.
Yeah.
I love those guys because they are center right, I would say, but they called Matt Walsh out on his bullshit. They're like, Matt, why do you have to be a jerk? Like, that doesn't seem like that's helping anybody's case. You know what I mean?
Jerkiness.
Say what?
I enjoy Matt being a jerk somehow.
Sometimes it's funny, and other times it's ludicrously irrepresentative.
You know,
But
I'll be honest with you. I could take someone like Matt Walsh if he had a sense of humor. I've known a lot. I've known
Well, he
people.
does have a sense of humor. That's it. That's the point. He has this
no, he does
deadpan,
not.
dry sense of humor.
No,
He
no,
does.
dude has zero sense of humor.
He does.
Oh my goodness.
His sense of humor is this very dry, deadpan sense of humor.
No,
I don't, but he does.
I'm going to go ahead and
does.
safe word out of that conversation, Charles. Pineapples.
I'm like,
He is not funny at all, and it doesn't come across as deadpan to me. Like,
I mean,
just no way.
He's not even Dennis Miller funny.
Yeah, not even close to Dennis Miller funny. Or what was that guy who was famous for his one-liners? He was very kind of stoic and monotone. He was not very attractive. This was back in the 80s. Oh, I can't remember his name. Damn it.
You're thinking of Stephen. Was it Stephen something or another?
I think you might be right. Work says in the 90s, the same uproar was happening with gay people in advertising, but now that's normal, so this will too. Yeah. Gay people exist, and they will continue to exist. And it's weird because, all the rhetoric around, homosexual individuals back in the 90s, these same arguments were being made. Gay people are satanic. Gay people are evil. Gay people want to destroy the world. They want to screw your kids and all this same bullshit. It's the same rhetoric all over again. And it was spurious then, and it's spurious now.
Well, you remember back in the 80s, like the mid 80s? It was after high school for me. But, that whole AIDS epidemic thing.
Oh, yeah.
I know Reagan and those guys, oh, man, they were like, they were, you remember people would be afraid to like shake hands, and it was a thing back in the mid 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion around that, and it was like, so lesbians really did take care of gay men during that entire period, because a lot of gay men, their parents would disown them. They wouldn't allow them back home. So you've got these men, who are children of some parents, dying on their deathbed, and their parents refuse to accept them because of what? Because they like sex differently than they do? Like, what a ridiculous idea and a concept to try and justify. Again, I go back to that whole concept of the compassionate Christian. That's not very compassionate. You know what I mean? And it just bothers me. It bothers me.
Well, there's something to be said for fire and brimstone.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into that conversation because we all know where I'm coming from. But
I'm one of these people who just kind of chuckles. It's like, I feel sorry for your kids. As a matter of fact, they're gonna, kids are gonna have what we used to call, coming out of Catholic school, the expansion factor. It's like, once you go from like a strict Catholic upbringing to college, you expand.
We have the same saying in Mormonville, because that's where I was raised, is, the bishop's daughter is always, is always the one that is going to give it up more than anybody else. It's like
Catholic
yeah.
students.
Yeah. And then you had, what is it? Which religion is it that allowed their ministers to marry? It was was it the Protestants or was it the
Well, it's
Baptist?
basically Episcopalians, Protestants
Episcopalian,
in
yeah.
general,
Yeah,
but
Protestants.
Episcopalians specifically.
Yeah, everybody knows the story about the minister's daughter, the bishop's daughter. We all have heard the stories, and they've been consistent enough a long time. We know exactly who we're talking about, right? I love the fact that Shark Tank is in here because he really is. I'm really enjoying their. I don't know what gender they are actually, but he says I agree and disagree with you, Steve. That's what I like to hear. I like that. Are you going to drop the link, Charles?
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm trying to get that now.
But yeah, I mean, there's sorry, a whole bunch of memories are coming back. But yeah, I mean, I had my fair share of fun with Bishop's daughters, my entire life. And so it's
Hey, Steve, stop defiling Bishop's daughters.
oh hell no. Well, I will now. I'm married, so I can't do it. But it's if you live under a repressive environment, once you're cut free and loose of that, you're going to go absolutely hog wild. Like that's just human nature. Human nature is to balance that we don't have with that which we do. Like humans crave balance and stability in their lives. So it doesn't surprise me that occurs. For example, even our own brains are wired this way. So like if you get an EpiPen shot, right? You get a little bit of a kind of a euphoric high from it because it's it's epinephrine, which causes a peak in what is it? Oh my gosh, my freaking words!
It's going to be adrenaline and
adrenaline. So what happens is once that adrenaline rushes over, your brain tanks those certain chemicals, right? And now you become sometimes people will even become extremely depressed. Even your own brain goes for stability and what was the other word I'm really bad today, guys. Equilibrium, right? We want an equilibrium. Even our brains are wired to do so. So it's like it doesn't surprise me that when you raise children under an oppressive environment, even though you have the best intentions, oftentimes what you were trying to not make them do, they end up doing because you're too oppressive about it. This is one of the reasons why people can disagree with me, but I don't cease swearing around my children because my children need to be comfortable around that because people in the real world cuss and they cuss badly or well. I protect my children against certain things. Like I'm not going to let my, 13-year-old watch a porno. That's obvious, right? I'm not going to do that. But when he's 18, am I going to say, well, you're wrong for doing that? No, I'm not going to say he's wrong for doing that. If he's curious about something, he's curious about something. But the worst thing you can do to a teenager is tell them don't do it. Because guess what they're going to do? They are going to do it, and they're going to do it times 2.
Well, I guess I'm going to be the outlier here. I literally have never, every now and again I'll kind of glance at what my son is doing. I don't censor anything, whatever he gets in trouble with, we'll fix it as it goes along. However, he tends not to be that inclined, and me thinking that means he's probably going hog wild online. But I've been hit any charge bills, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Okay, so let me lend my voice to this. I think, yeah, I kind of agree with you guys that, when there is a repressive system, right, people kind of rebel against it. So there needs to be balance, right? But as a Christian, there are certain values that you hold that is dear to you, that is dear to your faith, that is dear to your beliefs, right? That you want to pass on, that you want to make your children imbibe those values, right? So I think where a lot of Christian parents get it wrong is they try to insulate their children from anything that they deem is unchristian, right? You try to insulate them so much. And when they get the chance to see those things are actually exciting, right? Those things are really exciting. So it shouldn't be about insulating them. It should be about preparing them such that
Right.
when they find themselves in such situations, they would be able to withstand it. They'll be able to say, I have a background. I know where I'm coming from. I know who I am. Should be able to, resist these things, right? But insulation never works. And
Right.
yeah, what you guys are saying, there's also there's also Misty. Misty, we're enjoying your presence. We're enjoying your conversations. Please do not leave. We enjoy all voices, right? And I think you're making a valuable contribution to the conversation, right? We
Agreed.
The conversation is open. Everybody's free to share their thoughts, free to share their opinions, right? And if you
Yeah.
want to jump in, please feel free to do so. I've posted the link and I'll post it again. Maybe you can come
Well,
in and let's
what did
just
she
talk
think? What did she think?
I
about.
don't know. It's difficult to get a handle on her, but
She thought it was going to be three Matt Walshes.
I don't know what she thought it was going to be, but I still want to hear what she has to say.
No, she's been with us
Um,
for a very long time. I know Misty has been one of my earliest subscribers, so she understands at least
oh,
that we're not just a one trick pony, right? But
right.
I believe that just like Melinda said, this topic is sort of for women. I think that's why I'm even surprised why the men are getting angry over this, because it's not the men that Dylan is sort of erasing, it's the women he's erasing because he's appropriating womanhood, is trying to be the face of womanhood, right? And can it can seem somehow to the women themselves, but that's that. So
Well, is
back
he
to the
erasing
conversation.
or
Well,
is he enhancing it?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see that argument. Women being diminished by trans women. I mean, think of it as cultural appropriation. That's like saying, black people were diminished by having Eminem, be a big,
Right.
rap person. I mean, there are people who get upset at cultural appropriation and that sort of stuff, but if you really think about it, it doesn't really harm anyone. I don't see trans women as a threat to biological womanhood.
Yeah.
But again, as Anon keeps telling me, I don't get out enough. so maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I mean, we've had this conversation before. It's like we don't get to claim ownership over a culture. We don't get to
Right.
claim ownership over other people or other genders or sexes, right? You can say, well, I identify as a woman and you are a biological female and you were assigned female at birth and all these things, and you identify as a run-of-the-mill female. There's nothing wrong with that,
Let me
right?
ask you a question, though.
But you don't get to own other people and own their rights to that title either. It's uncomfortable for people to hear that, but that's the way that it is.
Do you think that? Do you think that? If you go back, even 50 years ago, especially in the South, there were, it was like a chivalry thing, where women were put up on a pedestal, that sort of thing. Do you think that is why people are so up in arms over trans womanhood?
Say that again?
You know how back in this in the South, even
Yeah.
even when I was growing up, women were put up on a pedestal. It was like a chivalry thing,
Oh
where
yeah.
holding the door open for women and putting your handkerchief down so a woman can walk across a puddle, you know
Right.
that sort of thing. Um,
I
is
still
that
open the
why
door for my
people are
wife.
so
Yeah.
is that why people are so up in arms over womanhood specifically?
Yeah.
Seems to be people are just really kind of miffed about trans women and women being threatened, womanhood being threatened more so than manhood.
Right. Well, I think in partial you may be correct, and in other ways I also think that feminism fought for the disintegration of gender norm roles, especially
Right.
in the house. Right. If
Mhm.
women want to go work, they can go work. If they want to fight in war, they should be able to fight in war if they want to.
Right.
So why are we not affording the same opportunities to other people to exist the way that women want to exist, or the way that men want to exist, or the way that trans people want to exist? Like that question has still not yet been answered by conservatives.
But
Like you,
Stanley, how do you, sorry, Steve, how do you feel about the situation where um, a man, a biological man, is is speaking for women? He doesn't he there's no how there's no amount of medication or transitioning that is going to make you understand exactly how a woman feels or
Right.
what a woman goes through, right? Now this man, he's being the face of womanhood, he's telling you this is what I mean. It is offensive
Well,
because you don't know
who
what they're going
specifically
through.
does that?
Dylan does that.
He does? Okay, I'm not real familiar.
I've met a bunch of conservatives that tell me how I live is wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I just had Jehovah Witnesses come to my door yesterday.
Do you offer him a bourbon?
No, I offered them to get the fuck off my porch though.
Well, you live out in the woods, don't you?
No, I live in suburbia,
Oh,
um,
okay.
near Ogden. But
I was about to say, what were they doing on your gravel road?
yeah, if I was living on a gravel road, that would be a different conversation. But no, the thing is that, and I agree with you, Charles. I think there's certain aspects that I can get behind you on, but inevitably, the forcing of another person to do something that we agree with is fundamentally and antithetical to uh, freedom doctrines, really. Right. So the right to be and do and exist how you see fit is the American dream, really. Like people come here to be whatever they want to be, but then they're trans, and then all of a sudden, well, that goes out the window. No, 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 no. We don't want you to be that type of person. We want you to be this type of person. Right. So there's an innate built-in hypocrisy that nobody is really kind of covering in this, in these kind of conversations. People have a right to exist how they want to exist, and is Dylan really speaking for women? I don't know.
What's his last name?
Mulvaney.
Okay, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. From
What
all
color?
accounts, from what I've seen and what I've heard about her, she's actually very kind and very
Why do
sweet.
you keep calling him her or she? You see, I'm making that mistake now.
Because I respect pronouns, Charles.
I respect nouns, not pronouns.
Well, I don't know. Wolf says something about trans women being hyper feminine. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Hmm.
I've known some biological women who, he hasn't hung out at the beauty parlor. There's some girly girls out there.
I've met some
But
masculine butch lesbians. Are they not women?
but the thing with the trans, especially with Dylan himself, is that it's as if he over exaggerates the femininity, right? As if to show that this is what it means to be a woman, right? Women come
Eh,
in all women come in all, all with all manner of temperaments and all that. But specifically, it's like a parody. He looks at the
Right.
most extreme form of what it means
nah.
to
But
be a woman
but
and
think about
just
it, Charles.
runs with it.
Some your the the driest teetotalers are sometimes former drunks. So I
You
mean,
may have to explain what a teetotaler is to him.
Yeah, I
well,
don't get
like a
that.
teetotaler is someone who is just totally anti-alcohol. Like back in during the prohibition period, back in the 20s in America, people temperance, people who are just into like alcohol is evil. If you drink alcohol, you're going to hell, etc. Some of the people that are the most adamant about sobriety are people who had trouble with sobriety. And I kind of see the same thing, someone who is trying hard to be feminine will overdo it.
Well, are they really overdoing it? Because Dylan kind of reminds me, especially how she dresses, very Jackie Onassis. She's very elegant. And you can say, well, it's a dude or whatever, but she's attractive on any scale. She's very kind.
Dylan is elegant.
Very, very elegant. Oh yeah, she's very elegant.
Yeah.
Very feminine.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with being extra feminine? Like now we're putting a negative value on femininity. Like I don't agree with that.
Because
like if you want to be
every time he expresses his feminine or he expresses femininity, he always expresses the extreme form of it, right?
well, she is a stage actress. Like she's acted for her entire life.
So he's performing. This
No.
whole woman is a character.
No, I'm not
He's-
saying that.
he's
I'm
playing a
saying
character.
actors are usually out there people. They really do just
But you
live
don't
that way.
No, you don't see actors. Actors act on screen. They don't make their characters become their real person, their persona. In real life, you don't see Tom Cruise running after a train in real life, right? Or you don't.
You apparently have not seen the Oprah interview.
It was still acting. If they're having an interview, they're putting on a show. It's a
He was
show. In
jumping
their
on
real life,
couches.
they're not doing that. So if you're saying this guy is acting, then he probably is acting, and it's all an act.
I don't think it's an act. I think that's who she is.
No, we disagree. Fundamentally disagree. Every time I see him, I'm just like, why is anyone taking this guy seriously? Like this is obvious parody, like pure parody. Yeah.
I don't think so. My wife is very feminine, and I love her for that. And in some ways, she's actually a little bit extra feminine, and I love that. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And if we're going to say, well, in order to be a woman, you have to have something or not have something, you're going to find women all over the place that share those qualities.
But you see, this is the same problem I have with people like the Andrew Tates, right? Where what it means to be a man is to be this extra macho, don't give a shit, But that's really not the life of a man, right? Where they feel that a man is entitled to anything, as many women as he wants, or as many women as he can get. That the life of a man should just be about conquering, about materialism.
Right.
That's not what it means to be a man. That is an exaggeration of what manhood is. And it's painting the wrong picture. That's my whole gripe with someone like. So if I have that gripe with a man who is exaggerating what it means to be a man, I'm going to have the same with a man who is exaggerating what it means to be a woman.
Well, I'm not saying you're not consistent with your beliefs, Charles. I'm just saying that still doesn't make him not a man, does it?
No,
it doesn't mean that he's not masculine.
But he's putting on a character, right?
I can't say that. I don't know the man personally. I can say that some of his behavior is irreverent and unacceptable in some terms. And you know me, I'm no fan of Andrew Tate, right? But I can't say that he's not a man. I can't say that he's not masculine. A lot of men share the same traits that he does, whether they're positive or negative. Like he's obviously successful. He's obviously a hard worker. But he's kind of a D-bag. Let's just face it. He's a D-bag.
Now let me prove to you that it's just acting, right? It's all bluff, right? So he's been on record so many times saying that he's conquered the matrix, that the matrix cannot hold him. He has 1 million passports, that he could just up and off, and he's gone to where he can't be touched. He's in Romania. Romania is a very corrupt country. He can buy his way out of any situation. He can buy anybody. And then dude was in jail for more than 3 months without charge, right? He couldn't walk his talk. So he was just bullshitting people. And then there are young men out there who think that they are losers because they don't have the kind of supposed influence that this idiot thinks he has, right? So
Yeah.
he's just spouting stuff. He's just spouting stuff that he cannot walk. He's not walking his talk.
Mm.
So how do you say he's not? That's not a character. That's a character. He's putting on a show for young men, right? That's what it is.
You know how many dudes put on a show in front of other dudes? Like that's the masculine hierarchy, dude. Like whoever is the most masculine has the highest tier of the dominance hierarchy, man. It's like that's all he's doing is he's playing into that stereotype, which I find repugnant and repulsive. But I see your point. I do see your point, but I don't think Dylan is being guilty of that. She's not ultra feminine. She's just feminine.
All right, so we disagree vehemently. We disagree vehemently.
Well, I took a look at a couple of photos. Actually, it's more Audrey Hepburn than
Oh, my lady.
Huh?
That's my lady right there. Like if you can even see, I've got a picture of her up there.
Yeah, I think she's going for more an Audrey Hepburn effect.
Yeah. No, she is very skinny. She is very skinny. Yeah, I loved Audrey Hepburn, but Audrey Hepburn is the epitome of femininity to me. So
Really?
I may be biased. So
I don't know.
I adored her, and I have been a fan of Audrey oh Jesus
Hepburn.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn, man, I am losing it today, man. I have been a fan of Audrey Hepburn. I was thinking like, oh, did I screw up and say Katharine Hepburn? No, it's Audrey Hepburn.
See,
I have
Catherine-
no idea who that person is.
Katharine Hepburn would be more my type.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
like the grizzled voice?
No, if you've ever seen her when she was young, she was the characters she played were very assertive.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
confident. And I would tend to be more like, I'm not into waifs.
I am huge into waists. I love my wife's waists. There are trans women living as women that don't call themselves female because they know biologically they are not. Yeah, there's a huge broad spectrum of those, Melinda. Like there's that broad spectrum all the way from like absolutism over here all the way over to what conservatives would consider reasonable. Like the trans community does not like Buck Angel, and they do not like Blair White, and which is weird because everywhere that Blair White or Buck Angel goes, like any conservative space, like even Charlie Kirk was respectful towards Blair White and using she pronouns. He talked to Buck Angel and referred to Buck Angel as he. Like it's crazy that you would not just state the obvious. You'd get a lot more respect, and that's one of the things that conservatives, I think, do have somewhat of a point. It's like, just be honest with me. Don't try and trick me. Don't try and fool me. Just tell me the truth, and I'd be way more accepting of you. That's the message that they're sending with that discussion, which I can't say isn't a valid argument. I think it's a valid argument. Just don't try and fool me.
Who's being untruthful?
Well, there's a large group that aren't. I don't want to put any names out there, but from my experience, I've seen it.
You remember the what's the song? Back in the 60s, the Lola. Who sang Lola, the song?
Eric Clapton?
No, it was darn it. And I actually have one of their albums with Lola on it.
Oh, who was that? Low, 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 low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that song is like from what, the early 70s or something. And I mean, I I guess maybe I don't get out enough. I don't know any trans people who are saying they're not trans,
Yeah.
or I haven't heard of any.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why inclusivity and pronouns are a big deal. It's for that reason. I don't necessarily care one way or the other. But I will tell you this, like, if I find that someone's being unreasonable, I just tend to not engage with them.
Right.
I just have I have no interest in engaging with people who are going to be difficult to discuss things with.
Yeah, now I haven't been on a campus in a college campus in 40 years. Well, no, more like 30, 35 years.
Well, didn't you go shopping with your son for college?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't pay attention to any of that. I'm
just giving you shit.
I mean, I've just never really run into a situation, and I live in Georgia, so you're only going to run into so much in Georgia. But I just can't imagine. I don't know if what people are saying, like they're huge gender pronoun wars on campus. I guess I'll find out in a year or two.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like Harry brought up a really interesting point here, is you have to learn all 150 pronouns. I don't know anybody who uses the odd pronouns. And I know a lot of people that are very specific about the pronouns that they use. I've never met a single person that uses neopronouns. I'm sure there's some, but even there, like, I know people are not used to using these, and it sounds really, really weird, and it's very anti-grammatical. But
why do you have to memorize them?
Well, there's a certain amount of acclimation that you have to go through to use pronouns, especially when they're not ones that you're usually normally comfortable using. But honestly, if someone was like, "Hey, you can call me Z or Zur," I'd be like, "And I will find the door."
How about I just call you by your name?
Right, and that's another possibility too.
Yeah, let's dispense. Let's not use pronouns. Let's use names.
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
I think the whole pronoun thing is just an exercise in narcissism, right? Because most of the time, people are not going to be using your pronouns to your face. It's usually as a reference to, as a third person reference. So you're asking people to, it's crazy. And I don't see the obsession with it. It's just pure narcissism to me. That's what I think.
There's a lot of people that I know that are not narcissists that use pronouns, and many of them are very kind, very wonderful people. Very not that way.
Then those ones are virtue signaling. Those are the ones that are not narcissists are just virtue signaling. They're just being woke.
I don't think they are, dude. You'd have to meet a couple of them. If you ever come to the States, I'll introduce you to some.
I think if you're coming out against that sort of stuff, like Jordan Peterson, I mean, what was his thing? Proposition C, whatever it was. What was that but virtue signaling?
Yeah, Bill C-16.
Yeah.
Well, the right virtue signals too. Yeah. The right virtue signals too, just like with the Bud Light thing. So yeah, it is what it is. I'll call it out where I see it. I think the pronoun thing is narcissism and virtue signaling.
How so? How is it narcissism?
It's like, me, see me. The world revolves around me. Everybody uses he or she pronouns, but somehow I'm special. So you have to use my made-up pronouns, right? Yeah.
Well,
narcissism.
Are you attributing a quality that you only see on social media to everyday individual trans people who exist outside of your sphere of influence?
Exactly.
Because I know trans people and they're not that
Probably.
way. You know, as
Probably.
long as you respect their pronouns, they're perfectly normal human beings. They just
Why?
like
Why?
you.
So, but
You would
if I
you would
don't
not want me to
respect their
refer to you as a
pronouns,
female. Well, you would not want me to refer to you as as a female, right?
because I'm not a female,
Right. And to them, they're not the opposite sex in their head.
they don't get to. They don't get to choose. They don't get to choose that.
They do.
It's
They
not.
have every
It's not.
right to do so as an
Actually,
individual
they
human
do.
being. Yeah, it's an individual human right.
It's not possible.
But
It's not possible.
Here's the
It
thing.
is possible.
You have the right to play the game that they're playing. Like you have that right as a human being to say, I'm not going
what,
to tell
what if I tell you? Steve, so people have the right to identify whatever way they want to identify, and you have to oblige them. Oh, what if I tell you that I'm the president of the United States and you have to call me Mr. President?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said you can
That's
identify however you
exactly-
want, and I have the choice to agree with you or not. That's
exactly.
how society
so I'm disagreeing with their identity. So I don't have to respect their pronouns.
No, you don't. I've never said that.
We're in agreement.
I advocate for that, but you have the right to not do that. Shark Tank. I'm loving this guy. Like he's like, I have to poop. Please stop talking for 10 minutes. I'll be back.
We'll just talk
man,
about
I would
you
love
pooping.
to hear that guy.
We'll just
Yeah.
talk about you pooping for 10 minutes.
Right. And you know, Charles, your criticism is more than well founded. And this is something that I think people on the left really have not come to terms with, is the fact that they don't get to control other people's speech. It's not acceptable. You cannot do it. If you meet someone who doesn't respect your pronouns, cool, walk the fuck away. It's not for you and it's not for them. It's time to cut that relationship dry. You know what I mean? And just like move on. Right? People have choices. The whole point of freedom is the freedom of choice.
Well, I don't know. It depends, though. I mean, if you're working at a company, you know, and your boss keeps, you know, misgendering you, you know, that could be a situation where you don't have, you know, at least in the short term, absolute freedom to walk away.
Right.
You know, I can think of situations where you may, you know, have to put up with that sort of thing. However, you know, there's a human resources department, but I don't know. I think that I really think that social media is like a magnifying glass. You know,
Right.
I don't know that social media, what happens on social media is, I think it's just a concentrator. Out in real life, when you go to the Walmart, you know, you're not having to deal with pronoun issues.
Right. Right. Most everyday things do not require you to do those.
Right.
To respect those. Like it rarely comes into a conversation. You know, the thing for me is like, because I run in lefty circles and in some aspects, really extremely lefty circles. The majority of the trans people that I know, they just simply want to exist without harm. Like that's what they would like. Not everyone is going to get involved in someone's delusion and lie to them. Yeah. I wouldn't consider it a delusion, but you know, the rest of your statement is completely accurate there, Elwalk. But yeah, I think people blow it out of proportion desperately, but also at the same time, they don't bother to take the time to learn who they're talking about, to meet them in their own world, and to actually try to understand them. And I think that's a shame. You know, I think it's an amazing thing to get to know someone who has a different belief system than you, and really explore that with them, and just ask them questions. Be like, hey, you know, why do you believe this? Why do you believe this? Because you never know if you're going to learn something new that you didn't know before. I mean, I personally like talking to people that I don't agree with. I learn a lot. I learn about my own arguments. I learn about my own beliefs, my own personal ideas. And I think to criticize trans people so heavily before even knowing them is a mistake. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, okay, so Steve, so
Yeah.
I agree with the belief thing, but what if we go more than belief, right? Let's say someone comes to you and say, well, I'm in support of pedophilia. Would you say, oh well, it's just a belief system, you have your belief on that kind of sexual orientation, I have my beliefs on it, so we can just talk, we can just let me try to understand where you're coming from, right? would
Mhm.
you would you say something like that?
If someone was to advocate for that, yeah, I would ask them more questions.
Yep.
And
You would want
here's
to
the
have a
thing.
conversation with that
I'm going to
kind
have a
of person?
conversation with them. Right. Because I don't know if they're jerking me around or not.
Uh-huh.
If I come to the
No,
conclusion
no,
that
no,
they're
they're not
actually
jerking you
serious,
around.
okay, so they're not
They are not
they're not
jerking you
joking around.
around. They
Okay.
are serious.
Well, I think there's a really great position on this is like you have the right to believe what you want, and while I don't have the right to do so, I will still meet your face with a fist, and I will suffer the consequences of that decision.
Why are you different from the person who thinks being trans is so abhorrent? Because you think that being a pedophile is so abhorrent that you're ready to meet someone's face with your fist and suffer the consequences of it. Why do you think it's any different from someone who thinks that the trans thing is so abhorrent that they're ready to do physical violence and face the consequences?
I'm sorry? I don't understand the question.
Okay, so you said you were going to meet the person's face with your fist, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's confirmed that this person believes he believes the pedophile, whatever, right? So I'm saying, how is that any different from someone who thinks that the trans issue is just as abhorrent as being a pedophile? Because you drew a line. You drew a
Yeah.
line to say, oh, the trans thing is
Yep.
it's a belief system, right? But the pedophile thing can also be seen as a belief system, right? So why are you willing to go violent with the pedophile and not with the trans? Why do you draw the line there? Isn't
Because
your
being
line
trans isn't
arbitrary?
inherently violent. Being a pedophile is. Children can't consent. End of story. Period.
Well, children can't consent. That's a social construction. What exactly do you
No, no,
mean by
no, no, no.
consent?
No, it's not.
The
It's not.
the social construction doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No, the social
well, it
construction.
does.
Well, no, the social construction doesn't matter. Or I'm sorry, actually, it does matter. That is your limit. That is your law. It's not illegal.
Yeah, but
Pedophilia
the,
is illegal. So, that's like saying I believe in killing people. Now, if you don't, you can say it as long as you don't act on it, that's fine. But being trans is not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not illegal because it's not illegal now. It was illegal before, isn't it?
No, it's never been.
Wasn't it illegal before?
It's never
Well,
been illegal.
Okay, so if
yeah.
so if there's a country, if we're going to go by, or we're only going to accept things based on the laws. For example, in
Well,
some
no, I'm
African
not.
countries,
I'm just saying.
being gay is a crime, right? And being trans would definitely be a crime too. So would it be okay because right now the law says, it's illegal? Are we going to go by the laws?
Well, think about what you're saying. Some of the countries that being homosexual is illegal also allow you to marry a 9-year-old.
Mm.
A lot of the
Some, yeah,
laws.
some,
So a lot of the laws
some, yeah,
regarding
some.
homosexuality
More than
Not
were
more
not
than you
all.
would be comfortable
decency
with.
laws.
Yep.
So a lot of the laws
Yep.
that people that jurisdictions use to criminalize homosexuality, they use decency laws to do so. So some of the laws, very common laws, were like if a woman was caught wearing pants at a known lesbian bar, they could definitely be arrested and prosecuted for a specific unrelated crime.
I don't think I'm trying to think. It wasn't like places like Britain and I think maybe even the United States. It wasn't being homosexual. Say in 1940s Britain wasn't illegal. It was the act. If you acted on it, it was illegal.
Yeah,
So,
because
I mean, I don't know about some of the countries you're talking about. If you come out and say, "Oh, hey, I'm gay," is that illegal? Or is acting upon it illegal?
Yeah, yeah. So like in my country, yeah, you can come out and say you're gay. Nobody's going to do anything to you. But in the laws, if you're caught in the act of homosexuality, it does carry some years sentencing. Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
entirely true. There was a case of a young girl who came out as lesbian in Nigeria. One of her male friends said, "Well, you just need some dick." Ended up raping her, getting her pregnant, and giving her
No,
AIDS.
no.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about two different things. We're talking about laws. We're talking about someone saying they are gay, right? If you say you're gay, well, you're gay, you're gay. That's you. People have said that, all that stuff. There are people. There.
Man, he's got a bad internet connection today.
Well, yeah. Actually, I'm trying out a 5G router. I'm not particularly happy with my 5G router. I may have to go back to fiber optic.
I don't know. It's looking pretty good from here, Stanley.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me? My
There you
network
go,
is
Charles.
terrible. Yeah.
Yes, sorry about that, man.
The point I was trying to make was that even currently there are some people, like, I don't know if you guys know this guy called Bobrisky, who is very famous in my country, is making a whole lot of money. He's a how would I call it? He's a cross dresser who says he's gay. Today he will tell you that he's a man. He'll tell you that, oh, I just had do this much blossoming sex with my boyfriend, and tomorrow he'll tell you, he's having periods. He does all those stuff, right? And he's famous. Nobody's going to arrest him, even though in the laws, homosexuality carries a fine. So it's the act itself. When you're caught in the act, that's when the law comes into place. So you just saying you're gay doesn't carry any penalty.
Well, not official penalty.
Not official. No official penalty.
There may be some back alley justice there.
Yeah.
Nope.
That was a double entendre.
No,
Double joke.
not really. No, but not really. Not really. So bad people are going to do bad stuff, and they're going to look for justifications anyway. So the question that the case that Steve brought up, that was just a shitty person who was looking for a way to rape a woman, right? So it wasn't. He just used that as a justification. He was going to do whatever he wanted to do. So most people are not going to see, oh, this person says they are gay, and let's just go beat them up and rape them. Not going to happen. Steve, you're muted.
Sorry. I see your point, but doesn't Nigeria have certain laws against homosexuality?
Yeah, it does.
And what are the crimes?
That's what
for
I
that?
just explained. So if you're caught in a homosexual act, I think it should be a 21-year jail sentence, I guess. And I don't think I've heard of anybody being convicted for that.
I mean, they're probably too scared.
I don't think I've heard of anybody.
Right, but
it does carry a sentence.
My point is laws are subjective, right? I mean, they're subjected to the culture, to the area, the location, the beliefs in that area. What I'm saying about pedophilia, though, is that children cannot consent. They do not have the brain. Their brain has not matured enough to be able to consent. And children deserve to be protected.
When exactly is a brain mature enough to consent? How do you determine
Physiologically,
that exactly?
25. Because
No,
you can
no.
test it.
By what? By Oh, so 25. But most countries have the age of consent at 18. So isn't
Yep.
that child abuse? Shouldn't we raise the age of consent to 25?
Yeah, sure.
So right now we're even doing the wrong thing. Having sex with someone less than 25 is actually statutory rape.
Sure.
In your conception of
Yeah.
of the world.
I'm more than fine with advocating for the minimum age of consent to be 25.
Well,
does that mean that's going to happen? No, it does not mean that that's going to happen. But we know for a fact that people's brains. Oh, you're breaking up again, Stanley. Maybe that internet connection does suck. We didn't hear anything you said, Stanley.
No, I was about to say only 20-year-olds will be a little bit irritated with 25 being the age of consent.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying it's reasonable to raise the age limit to 25. I'm not saying that. It's actually very unreasonable. Like, we would have such a massive shift in our culture if that was the case. But no, like, I mean, you could make the argument that the minimum age should be 25, because we know for a fact that brain development stops at 25 when in consideration to the frontal cortex and decision-making skills. They are finally fully formed at 25. There's very little doubt. There's very little doubt about
now, every country in the world is supporting pedophilia by having the age of consent being 18. From this fact you're bringing to us now.
Yeah, they would be if I had my way. Yeah, don't have to like that. and you could very easily argue against it, but that's an argument that could be had. I'm not specifically advocating for that, though. I'm just saying it's an argument that could be made. But despite that, I have a very staunch, hardline perspective about pedophilia and allowing access to children with grown-ups. I don't support it, and I never will under any circumstances, whether it's legal or not. And I don't like maps. I think minor attracted people trying to fly their banner under the LGBTQ banner is disgusting. And I know people that work at LGBTQ centers. They are not for that. Whatever Matt Walsh wants to say about it he's completely wrong. LGBTQ folks protect children as much as they possibly can, and they're not going to allow pedophilia into their ranks. It's just not going to happen. So that's my personal thoughts on it. Maybe I'm not answering your challenge well, Charles, and I will admit that. It's one of those things where I just have a hard limit.
Well, I think at least as it stands in the United States, it's pretty easy because of the law to make those distinctions.
Yeah.
And I think that, believing in it isn't necessarily illegal. It's when you take action. Now, the thing is believing in something like pedophilia. There should be a certain amount of social shunning, I guess. You're not going to win friends and influence people if you're flaunting your, that sort of attraction around.
Right.
There will be more than Steve probably putting a fist to your face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that.
But the trans piece, if that's not it's not illegal, and I think in my opinion, I just think that this is something that is blown way out of proportion. I think I saw a number somewhere that only 6% of the population maybe is in the trans category. So
I think it's actually more like 1 to 2%.
yeah, I think that's a whole lot of kerfuffle over 1% of a population.
Right. I mean, given the fact that most
One
conservatives,
percent that wants to direct. They want to direct the conversation around the
See,
whole
I don't believe that.
gender and what.
I don't believe that. It's the conservatives complaining about it that are taking over the conversation.
yeah, I don't actually see much of it out in the real world.
Yeah. If they want to have, if trans people want to have a parade, let them have a parade. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to understand and recognize that Shark Tank is done pooping, and it's back, and apologizes for yelling that he was done pooping. Yeah, that too is most pedos I've found I found out about were in the church. Man, let's not even go down that Catholic conversation. But yeah, that was a joke. But no, you there, Charles?
Yeah, that's not surprising. It's not surprising that you get pedos in a place where men are asked not to get married, or they're asked not to have any sort of sexual relations with women. What kind of men do you think that would attract? Well, you're going to select for some pedos, a lot of pedos.
Well, there was a conversation not too long ago about why there is so much of that in the church, and it kind of goes back to the church's position on homosexuality and not allowing homosexuals to exist freely in the world. If you were a Catholic and you were gay and you were male, you sometimes only had a couple of different options: either move out of the area, don't tell anybody, or join the church as a member of the clergy. And that's not saying that gay people are always pedophiles. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that there's people who would actively go into the church to escape situations where they didn't want to be in. And I think that kind of led to the increase in that. Not to mention, you're sexually repressing individuals under the guilt of, damnation and God's hellfire.
I disagree with that.
Bad recipe.
The church isn't sexually repressing anybody. Okay, they don't force you to become a priest.
No, but you take a vow of chastity.
Right. Well, that's a voluntary vow. So the church is saying once you take the vow, but they're also saying, hey, if you take the vow, here are the rules. Okay, the church isn't forcing people to join the priesthood.
Well,
it's not forcing people, but their criteria is selecting for certain types of people. It's not forcing anyone, of course.
All I'm saying is saying the church is sexually repressing people. That is not true.
I don't know about that. My argument would follow.
They are not requiring you to join the priesthood.
Well, they're not requiring you to join the priesthood. No, but if you make a pact with someone and they say you can do this voluntarily, but if you break this pact, then I'm going to kill you. Right? You would say, well, that's not really voluntary, is it?
Okay, well, the church doesn't kill priests.
I know. I'm making an extreme example here.
But I mean, you join the military. When you join the military, you volunteer to protect and serve, and all the other rules that So it's the same thing. Nobody, you could say that the military is repressive, but that's not really true. You volunteer. Now, when there was a draft, maybe you could make that argument, but nobody's drafting priests. Saying that the church is repressive is simply not true. If you join, you're repressing yourself.
Yeah. Asta, no, that's not what I'm saying. I think I've about reached my capacity to have my brain work today. I'm, like I said, guys, I'm already hungover. And I had to take a nap before this so that I could actually hopefully try to compete in the conversation. But I know that I have better arguments for these positions, but there's just no one home up there today. It's like vacancy, dude. Steve's brain is not functioning today.
Let me address Harry's comment. There are a lot of gays in all branches of the military.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Navy's that special.
Well, they're the only ones that have soldiers called seamen.
Yeah, well, they're not really soldiers; they're actually seamen. But
good old Navy jokes, dude. Good old Navy jokes.
Yeah, well, I usually I just had to address Harry's little snide comment.
Well, it's so funny because, like, in the Navy, especially on submarines, like, are women still not allowed on submarines?
No, they can be on submarines.
Oh, now they can be? Because
Yeah.
I know for a long time they were not allowed to be.
As a matter of fact, I got out of the Navy in 1994. The month that I left my ship was the month women first reported aboard.
Oh, nice.
Destroyer.
Very nice. I had a friend who was a submariner.
Yep. Tough. That's a tough life.
Yeah. Yeah, not easy. I mean, gone for 6 to 8 months out of the year at sea in a little basket case of a room, and it was bad, dude. He was well over 6 foot tall, and I don't know if you've ever seen the bunks in a submarine. They are not 6 feet tall.
Well, no, I've been on submarines.
Yeah,
there is a height limit to submarines. I can't remember what it is.
I don't know, but he must have just been barely under it.
Yeah. Well, I can, ships in general are pretty cramped spaces.
Yeah, they definitely make the most of their space. But anyways, yeah, I'm about ready to hop off here, Charles. I gotta get some stuff done for the day.
Yeah, it's
all
getting
right,
late,
so
isn't it, Charles?
Sorry, what's
it's past 11, almost 12 to me. So this would be a good place to draw the conversation to a close. As usual, nice talk, Stanley. Nice talk.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I'll catch you guys in another live stream.
Hey, Wolf, I'll hop
bye
on
for now.
Discord. Wolf, I'll hop on Discord in about 15 minutes.
I might hop on there.
All right, so you can go continue the conversation on Discord. So Harry, Melinda, Wolf, Levi, Asta, Shark Tank, Misty, thanks for coming, guys. Elwalk,
and Shark
catch
Tank.
you guys in another live. Yeah.
We'll
Bye
see
for
you
now.
guys.